All right, let's jump right into this. Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are exploring one of the most fascinating intersections of human history. We're looking at the exact point where an apocalyptic ancient myth collides perfectly with modern tectonic science. We're going to journey back to the height of the Aztec Empire to really dig into their terrifying cosmological prophecy of the fifth sun. And then we'll fast forward to today to see how modern geology proves that, in their own unique way, they were absolutely right. To really grasp the stakes of the Aztec worldview, you have to hear this dire warning. This was recorded in the Florentine Codex by Bernardino de Sahagún back in the 16th century, but these were the words of Nahuatl elders describing their own era. They said, "Under this sun there will be earthquakes and hunger, and then our end shall come." I mean, wow, they truly deeply believed they were living on borrowed time, just existing in this incredibly fragile era that was absolutely doomed to end in seismic catastrophe. So, that brings us to the central mystery we're unraveling today. How exactly did an ancient empire accurately predict its own geological doom? Were they tapping into some kind of supernatural foresight, or was something much more grounded actually going on? To figure that out, we need to do a hard pivot away from supernatural belief and look at the gritty empirical realities of living in one of the most volatile landscapes on Earth. Now, the linguistic glue that holds this entire prophecy together is just incredible. The Aztecs called their current era the fifth sun, or Nahui Ollin. In classical Nahuatl, Nahui means four, and Ollin, well, Ollin is a word with a terrifying double meaning. It translates to movement, specifically the motion of the sun across the sky, but it also literally means earthquake. So right there, built into the very name of the era they were living in, solar motion and terrestrial destruction were permanently linked together. And it's crucial to understand that the fifth sun wasn't their first attempt at cosmic order. The Aztecs inherited this incredibly intense Mesoamerican legend of cyclical creation and destruction. Basically, every previous sun had failed, and failed hard. The first sun lasted 676 years before it was completely devoured by jaguars. The second fell to wind, the third to fire rain, and the fourth got wiped out by a massive flood. So this present fifth sun, which they governed by these strict 52-year cycles, was seen as deeply, deeply precarious. It was the sole surviving era, constantly haunted by the promise of a world-ending earthquake. Let's broaden the context a bit, though, because the Aztecs actually weren't totally alone in these cyclical anxieties. This whole concept of serial world ages ending in elemental catastrophes, it's shared globally. You look at the Norse concept of Ragnarok, which ends in fire and flood, or the Hindu cycle of the four yugas, ending in cosmic dissolution. It seems like humanity just has this universal intuition about the fragility of our world. But the Aztecs took this universal anxiety and literally carved it into stone. 24 tons. Just try to picture that. That is the immense weight of the Aztec Sun Stone. It's this incredible 3.6-meter basalt disc carved between 1502 and 1520 CE, right during the reign of Moctezuma II. And this colossal monument grounds their entire mythology and physical reality. It's this terrifyingly beautiful depiction of those previous four failed suns, all surrounding the current era of Ollin. But here's the thing, the sunstone is actually widely misunderstood today. Despite all those wild internet rumors, it is absolutely not a literal calendar predicting a specific end date like the whole 2012 thing. Actually, scratch that. It's more like a cosmic model of space-time itself. And scholars are still actively debating who exactly is depicted staring out from the very center. Some experts say it's the sun god Tonatiuh. Others argue it's Tlaltecuhtli, the Earth Lord, which makes a ton of sense given the earthquake prophecy. Some even think it's a deified fusion of the ruler Moctezuma II himself, basically putting the emperor at the dead center of the universe. So, if the world is destined to end in an earthquake, how did they try to stop it? Well, through the strict logic of cosmic debt. The Aztecs believed that in order to even create this fifth sun, the gods had to sacrifice themselves at the ancient city of Teotihuacan. Specifically, a god literally threw himself into a divine fire. Because of that ultimate sacrifice, humanity owed a perpetual blood debt. To keep the sun moving and stop the earth from violently shaking itself apart, the priesthood had to perform next lahali, which literally translates to debt payment. To us, human sacrifice is horrifying, but to them, it wasn't random violence. It was a vital, empirical necessity. It was literally the fuel keeping the apocalypse at bay. Now let's see how this ancient, gripping dread actually maps onto our modern understanding. On one side, we have the Aztec mythological explanation for doom. We've got divine debt, blood sacrifice, and massive subterranean monsters. But on the other side, we have the vocabulary of modern scientific reality: flat slab subduction, shifting tectonic plates, and seismic waves. And the absolutely amazing part here, they are both describing the exact same patch of ground. Okay, to really get the science, we have to look at the real-world geological setting of the Aztec capital, Tenochtitlan, which, of course, lies directly beneath modern-day Mexico City. This city is situated right smack in the middle of the Trans-Mexican volcanic belt. We're talking about a massive 1,000-kilometer east-west volcanic arc stretching from the Pacific Ocean all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. It is, without a doubt, one of the most seismically complex and outright dangerous regions on planet Earth. And this number brilliantly illustrates exactly why it's so incredibly dangerous. 15. Specifically, 15 degrees. Underneath central Mexico, the oceanic Cocos Plate is actively sliding beneath the North American Plate. But unlike most subduction zones where plates dive pretty steeply into the Earth, the Cocos Plate slides at a remarkably shallow 15-degree angle. Geologists call this flat slab subduction. Basically, the plate scrapes horizontally along the continental crest for hundreds of kilometers before it finally, suddenly bends downward. This unique, shallow geometry creates a literal perfect storm of geological threats right in the basin of Mexico. That flat slab subduction means immense bending stresses build up deep underground, and that generates violent intraplate earthquakes. Plus, you have the crustal extension of the volcanic belt literally pulling the ground apart. But the deadliest threat of all, the one that truly seals Mexico City's fate, is basin amplification in the former Lake Texcoco. And this right here is where the two worlds connect so perfectly it gives you chills. The Aztecs lived in terror of the awakening of an earth monster they called Tepeolotl, the heart of the mountains, roaring deep beneath their feet. Today, geologists call this exact same phenomenon the basin amplification effect. See, Tenochtitlan was built on an island in Lake Texcoco. Today, Mexico City sits right on top of that dried lake bed, and that lake bed is made of incredibly soft, highly saturated clay up to 50 meters thick. When seismic waves hit this clay basin, they don't just pass through. It's like hitting a giant bowl of gelatin. The waves get trapped, they bounce back and forth, and they violently amplify the shaking. The deadly reality of this basin amplification is just devastatingly clear, even in modern times. Back in 1985, an 8.0 magnitude earthquake centered 400 kilometers away hit the basin. Those trapped waves resonated at the exact frequency of 10 to 15-story buildings, causing absolute catastrophe. Then again, in 2017, a 7.1 magnitude quake struck closer to the city, and once again caused massive damage purely because that soft lake bed amplified the destructive energy. The heart of the mountains is very, very real, you guys. It's the clay right beneath the city. But you know, the Aztecs weren't just terrified victims waiting passively for doom. They were actually conducting what we would call early empirical seismology. The Codex Telleriano-Remensis is this incredible 16th century manuscript, and it contains 12 distinct pictographic records of earthquakes between 1460 and 1542 CE. They were systematically tracking these disasters. They combined the glyphs for movement and earth to carefully monitor the local tremors over decades. To really emphasize the empirical reality of their fears, let's look at one highly specific event they recorded. In the year 1507, a massive earthquake struck the capital. It was so violent that it destroyed a major temple and caused the waters of the lake to violently surge, drowning 1,800 Aztec warriors. I mean, think about that. When your daily lived reality involves the earth suddenly rising up and swallowing armies, predicting that the world is going to end in an earthquake isn't exactly a wild supernatural guess, is it? So let's summarize why the Aztec prophecy actually makes perfect empirical sense. Sure, the Aztecs lacked the modern scientific framework of plate tectonics, but they were highly sophisticated observers of their environment. Linguistic double meanings perfectly linked the motion of the sun to the shaking ground. Frequent local tremors provided hard observational proof that earthquakes were their greatest regional hazard. Their entire calendrical logic tied everything to disruptive days, and their political theology used this terrifying reality to justify the empire's expansion and its desperate need for sacrifice. They correctly identified the exact right threat, even if they used a mythological mechanism to explain it. Which really brings us to a final thought here. Today, obviously, modern science offers us building codes, early warning systems, and precise seismic monitoring to mitigate the threat of that flat slab subduction zone. We certainly don't believe human sacrifice will stop the Earth from shaking. But as we face our own modern, scientifically proven global crises, from extreme climate change to ecological collapse, we still wrestle with the exact same anxieties. We still look around and see a world in precarious balance. So I have to ask, are we really so different from the Aztecs, looking up at a fragile sky, just hoping our actions today will hold off the end of the world tomorrow? Something to think about. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you all next time.